Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we'll be taking a look through my collection of vintage Penguin poets alongside the little known Penguin music scores for their beautiful, fantastic and just gorgeous jackets. So sit back, relax and let's get to it. Okay, so we'll start off with Penguin Poets #1, and I don't mind the Penguin poetry, but poetry is sort of something that I'm not really into. I studied a bit at school. I've dipped my toe in, as it were, and I've had a little look, but it just doesn't really inspire me. So my collection of poetry and the Penguin music scores as well is something that's just come about for being a Penguin collector more than for the actual content. But it is still, part of the Penguin story and quite an important part too. And well, this was the very first Penguin Poets, and it was published in June 1941 with the selection from Tennyson here. And this particular volume has obviously this is during the war, so it's got the little forces notes in there. This has got a facsimile of Tennyson's handwriting. It's sort of reproduced, which is slightly unusual. Not sure why they did that, but there we are. Yeah, 1941. So yet another series that Penguin launched right in the middle of the war, and it's fairly in keeping with the books of the time. But as we'll see, the style of the Penguin poetry books does sort of change quite a bit. Now, there had been prior to this Penguin poetry books published, but they were as Pelicans, and the first one of those was Pelican A17, which was a book of English poetry. So anyway, that was followed by, once again, a slight change in the design here for #2, which is Wordsworth. So things have got a little bit tighter, and paper-wise, that is. And so #2, well, it was just a little bit later on in time, and that it didn't really carry on what had been set up with #1 here. But if we have a little look, there we are. There's a little portrait, head and shoulders there, of Wordsworth. And you can see, because of the time that this was printed, 1943, the Penguins from 43 and 44 are amongst the most fragile of all. And you can see that you can almost see through this paper. This probably would have had quite a lowish print run, no more than I would have thought 50,000. So yeah, probably making it quite scarce. But that was the same sort of format there. And there's #3 there for Robert Burns, the Penguin Poets. It's gone up to £1 now. And then #4 here, this one looks much more in keeping with a regular Penguin book, doesn't it? Yeah, first published 1948. So that's a bit more in line with the Penguin books of the time. And then #5 was basically the series got a bit of an overhaul. So this is D5, D being the poetry prefix, a book of English poetry. And this design was by Jan Tuchnoid, who was one of Penguin's most distinguished sort of designers. This one's an extra library copy by the look of it for the English poets. Yeah, new and enlarged edition for 1950. There we are. Yeah, that's a bit of a beach in that one. But this is the style that we were going to have now for a bit of time. This is #6. I haven't quite got them all. I've got, out of the first 100, I'm missing maybe about 4 or 5. So almost all of them, but not quite all of these. Centuries Poets there, volume 2. And #8, 9 and 10, once again, were all previously Pelicans, A39 and 40 and at 93. And Penguin decided to put them all together as sort of dedicated poetry books in a 5-volume series. So that's volume 4 there. And volume 5, which I think was probably a good way to do it. Now, #10 here, once again, a slight departure. Now, I suspect, at #11 rather, I suspect this may be because at the time, 1950, Penguin were publishing multiple D.H. Lawrences at the same time. I think they did a D.H. Lawrence 10, as they sometimes did. In fact, there we are. And the selected poems was to make this volume here in keeping with the rest of the D.H. Lawrence 10, unlike that design. So that's why this has come out in this slightly unusual and out of context covering. There we go. So this is how the books continued for a while. In fact, all the way up to number 25. And then they take a distinct turn for the goodness. And I'm sure you'll know why. If anyone has ever wanted any Penguin poetry books, it's for the beautiful, gorgeous covers that came a little bit later on. And they were designed by a lady, Elizabeth Friedlander. Here's Edith Sitwell, number 16. C.J. Lewis, 17. And these copies, they've got like, it's like a buff feeling to the covers. They're not glossy. They're distinctively in a particular format, celebrating the poetry list, really. Poetry's for 1951. This one also has a mention here, the prize-winning entries for the Festival of Britain competition. So that was, of course, in 1951. And Penguin did enter a few books in that competition. I don't know if it won any. I think it certainly put a few through. Comic and Curious Verse is number 19. Border Ballads is 20. Milton, 21. And these are really nice when you get a run of them together. Penguin Book of Modern American Verse, number 22. 23 is Keats. And 24 is Browning. Now, number 25 is the first one. I believe this is 1954. This is the first one where we get the different cover design. And this is the first one to be designed by Elizabeth Friedlander. Yeah, 1954. So there are some people, they're not too fussed about those earlier ones, but they do love these particular jackets. And you can see why. They are absolutely fantastic. They really are so distinctive. Each one is almost like apparently unique. So we'll show a few of these, but actually Elizabeth Friedlander, she actually did the Penguin music scores before she did these. So we'll just do a few of these, and then we'll have a look at the music scores. But this is the period that people really, really like with Penguin poetry because of these stunning covers. And they also look particularly attractive spine on. Some real sort of eye candy for your shelf, as it were. If we just have a sort of closer look at the spines of these. Now, the earlier ones, obviously these are quite old now. These are, like almost 80-year-old paperbacks, and they are a little bit washed out, but the colors are quite light. They're not bold and vivid. They're almost like pastel-y, you could say. But we'll leave it at number 29, and we'll pause there, and we'll get out the first of the scores, which is this one here. So the Penguin music scores, these are not difficult to find, and often they turn up in sets. Honestly, they only go for like £1 or 2 each. But you can see it's the same designer, and these actually came a little bit before she took over the Penguin poetry. And I thought, well, there's no way I'm ever going to do a dedicated video on Penguin music scores. But since we've got the poetry ones out, I thought perfect, literally a perfect time to showcase these rather beautiful books. Now, as I said, often you see these in sets for like £20 for the set. They are what they are. I mean, I'm no musician, but this is the sort of thing that Penguin produced, probably to not much financial success, but it was doing a public service, which I think was what Alan Lane was always striving for. The Penguin creator, he wanted Penguin to be the popular educator, and I think these very much fit the bill, a bit like the Pelicans. But I have got the full run, so we'll zip through. This is number 7, just so you get to see the whole lot, and then we'll be back to the poetry again. Number 8 there. They are gorgeous, very, very nice. And also unusual, obviously, in the oblong format here. That's the first 10. Now this one actually is a change of direction, because this is actually more traditional format, the Tchaikovsky on there. Yes, very, very nice indeed, these. Yes, gorgeous. And you get the idea. You can see why something like this sort of design would be quite attractive for the Penguin poetry list, you know. I mean, it wasn't like they were publishing, 5 of these a month. It was like at most one a month. So they had time to work on the covers, or rather she had time to work on them. And some of them are much thicker and longer books. This is a huge one, really, 150 odd pages for that one, depending on the score in question. Some of the traditional format one. 21 there. Yeah, I remember when I bought my set, I paid £1 each. The guy I bought them off had 3 sets, if you can believe it. He said he just couldn't resist picking them up when he saw them. So fair enough. So I got a set for £1 a book, which I thought was really good. 25, that's 26, 27, and this is, I believe, the last one, number 28, Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 in D minor, which is a real huge one. Almost 365 pages. So there we are. So that was, in a nutshell, a whistle-stop tour of the Penguin scores. Right, let's clear the decks a bit and get back to the poetry. So the next run are all Elizabeth Friedlander designed jackets. Penguin Book of Spanish Verse. More comic and curious verse. And we will put them sort of that way around once we've had a look, so you can have a little bit of a spine angle action. This one's unusual because it's like got in gold, and my copy is not very good, unfortunately. It's but this is like a gold based one, big thick book, and maybe they just wanted to do something a little bit more special for the Book of English Verse. That was number 32. This is 33. Book of French Verse. Coleridge, 35. German verse there. Really are just great looking books, aren't they? 37 for Italian verse, so they're touring Europe at the moment. Metaphysical poets, 38. One by Robert Graves, selected by himself, the great Robert Graves. Did lots for Penguin, of course. 1957, nice copy of that one. Australian verse. Slide them round there. Start another pile. Auden, W.H. Auden. William Blake. That's a nice cover as well, isn't it? Look at that. Very nice. French verse, volume 2, 43. Hilaire Belloc. Got his familiar HB, which Penguin used across their list for Hilaire Belloc titles. Penguin Book of New Zealand Verse, number 45 there. Canadian Verse. French Verse 4. Yet more comic and curious verse, number 48. Narrative verse, it's 49. And there's 50. So pre-ISBN, which is the area that I collect, roughly speaking, Penguin poetry went up to about number 110 or so. So that's sort of when my collection stops. As I said, I haven't quite got them all. There's just a handful I'm missing. But it did carry on, and Penguin still publish poetry today, of course. but I tend to stick to like 1970 and below is my era. That's 53 and 54 there. All of these beautiful, beautiful spines. Just look at them. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so looking at the second half of these with Swinburne. Another absolutely gorgeous one. This reminds me of a Puffin book, the same feel as well. Particularly Frances Hodgson Burnett's Secret Garden. That's what that reminds me of, that particular one. Number 55. Probably published around the same sort of time, actually. Look at this. They're just magic, aren't they? They're just not your regular sort of Penguin book. And it just shows that when they tried, they could really produce a beautiful cover. Russian verse. But Herrick. Georgian poetry. Latin verse. That's nice, isn't it? With the bits of Latin in the background there. Now, this is the first Penguin Modern Poets. This is a completely new series that was launched and was very, very successful. This one's got Lawrence Durrell in. That's the only name I really recognise. But this was a supremely successful series within the series at number 1962 for Penguin Modern Poets number 1. And these went on and on and on. And that's actually a pretty nice copy of that one. So we've got Kingsley Amis in for Modern Poets 2. But we've still got our traditional ones here. New Poetry is number 63. So we're showing these in numerical order, which is usually the published order. Nice copy of 64 there. Penguin Book of Chinese verse. I guess it was somewhere where they hadn't yet covered. Religious verse, number 66. Done like a stained glass window, that one. Very nice. Contemporary American poetry. So this one here, it's got a slightly different feel to it. Like this cover is glossy. It's got like a glossy feeling cover. So I think there was a slight change in production there. This one's back to what it was, 68. This one's doesn't seem to quite fit anywhere. It's not like the traditional ones, and it's not like a modern poet, and not part of that series. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, if indeed it is a he. Yeah, there we are. And I did notice this has got that name in there. Not really sure if it's anything to do with the author, but I'm sure a learned viewer will know about that. I have got one signed Penguin poetry book, which we'll have a look at in a minute. Here's Modern Poets 3. Pushkin. Let's get a great cover on these. Beautiful. E. Cummings, Selected Poems, 72, that is. Poetry of the 30s, look at that. That's great, isn't it? With 30s like design elements there. Very, very nice, that. That's gorgeous. 74. Look at this. Penguin Book of Sick Verse for 75. Wow. 76. Modern Poets 4. And 77. This is Allen Ginsberg and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, I should say. And yeah, this was the one, yeah, signed by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Worcester, October 1988. Look at that. Someone obviously took that along to a reading or a signing of some sort. Really don't remember how that ended up in my collection, but I've had it for quite a while. It's another interesting one. Penguin Modern European Poets. Rilke, Selected Poems. That's 79. Tip-top shape. 1964, that one. Modern Poet 6. Mid-century English poetry, 1940 to 1960. That's number 81. European Poets again for 82. Apollinaire. Very, very nice poetry books these are. Elizabethan Verse for number 83. And then 84 is Prevert, Selections from Paroles with a picture jacket. And European poets again. So I guess with the European ones, they could experiment a little bit outside the traditional gorgeous covers. This is the mid-60s after all. Right, I'm just going to pause one last time to get the last lot out. Okay, the last little run here. So this is number 85, Mallarmé, I think is how you pronounce that one. Then a European poet, Quasimodo, Selected Poems. This is nice. Number 87, Longer Contemporary Poems. Beautiful copy of that one. 1966. Penguin Book of Animal Verse. And I think we've just about seen the end. That Elizabethan verse just now. No, in fact, that one there, I think that appears to be the very last of the beautifully designed ones. These are still nice, but they're just not in the same style, as it were. So this has got a wraparound cover, this one. Penguin Book of Animal Verse. The Complete Muse, popular British ballad for poetry from the 15th to the 20th century. Modern Poets 7. European Poets, again, 4 Greek poets. So the European ones aren't numbered, they're just like a series within a series. 94 here, the Penguin Book of Modern Verse Translation. European again, Miroslav Holub, Selected Poems. Book of Welsh Verse, 96. This is more in keeping with the older style, isn't it? So there's a little bit of that, a little bit of a hark back. Modern Poets 9. 98 here is a beautiful, beautiful design on this one. Hein, Selected Verse. Look at that. Cover design by Henning Bolhild. So you'll see the original designer is no longer doing these. Number 100 then is Poetry of the 40s. We had the 30s earlier, didn't we? The cover shows a detail of Lansdowne Crescent in Bath by John Piper. Very nice. 101, Penguin Book of Satirical Verse. Beautiful. Here's a Penguin Modern Poets number 10. This was quite collectible. The Mersey Sound. It was, I guess, Liverpool poets. And yeah, there's quite a collectible one, this. One to look out for in any printing. And 104. 108, Penguin Book of Restoration Verse. Penguin Book of South African Verse. 109. They've certainly been around the world with these, haven't they? Many countries. The last modern poets we got, Charles Bukowski there, is the name that I recognise for Penguin Modern Poets 111. And we got Hans Magnus, European Poets 112. I guess that's a photograph of him. And my last one is 114, Vasco Popa Selected Poems, another one from the European Poets series. And by then, this has got 20p, so this is a very, very late entry, possibly the last one. First published 69. This will be, probably the very last one. That's introduction by Ted Hughes, I see. So there we are. So what a fantastic, fantastic series the Penguin Poets actually are. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed looking through those rather beautiful Penguin poetry books and also the Penguin music scores, which you don't often see around, but very much in keeping with the poetry books. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button if you've not already for regular vintage Penguin content, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.